The human fleet moved forward into the system, their engines burning slow and steady, their shields glowing faintly in the dark. Every eye was on the scanners, every hand ready on the controls. The enemy ships that had appeared in the last moment of shock were gone now, as if they had vanished into nothing. No readings showed them, no signatures remained. It was as if they had never been there. But the memory of them, the sight of alien steel blotting out the stars, stayed sharp in every human mind. A trap. A cruel game. The enemy wanted fear, and they were close to getting it. Yet humanity had not run. The fleet advanced deeper, slow and cautious, every sensor stretched wide, every gun armed. The system itself was a tomb. Planets lay silent, their surfaces cracked and burned. Great cities that once must have shone with light now lay in ruin, towers shattered, seas boiling dry. On one world, the skeletons of starports jutted upward like broken teeth. On another, craters spread like disease, black scars against gray rock. Whatever had lived here was gone. Destroyed. The admiral stood in silence as the reports came. No life signs detected. No broadcasts. No power grids online. Each word was heavier than the last. A whole system, wiped clean. A warning, or perhaps a trophy left behind. The younger crew could not understand it. They whispered in low voices, asking why anyone would burn entire worlds just to leave them empty. The veterans said nothing, their jaws set, their eyes cold. They knew this was the language of monsters. But then something appeared on the scanners, faint, drifting in the dark. Wreckage. At first, the crew thought it was only the ruins of battle, broken ships left to float. But as the fleet drew closer, they saw more detail. The ships were human. Their hulls carried the markings of old fleets, their steel scarred but still recognizable. Dozens of them drifted together, silent graves of long-dead crews. Some had their lights still faintly glowing. Some had weapons locked forward, as if waiting. The admiral's eyes narrowed. He had seen this once before in ancient war reports. Enemy bait. Ships left looking dead, but alive enough to fool the scanners. He gave the order. Do not approach. Form defensive line. The human ships spread out, keeping distance, weapons tracking every movement of the wrecks. The wrecks did not move. They only drifted slowly, turning in the void, as if pushed by unseen hands. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger, so strong that even the youngest crew felt it. Something was out there, hidden. Something was studying them. The silence became unbearable. No voice, no signal, nothing but the endless hum of engines and the faint pulse of shields. Then, without warning, one of the wrecked ships powered up. Lights snapped on, weapons charged, and a burning beam of energy fired straight toward the human fleet. Shields flared as the first blast struck, rocking the nearest frigate but not breaking it. The fleet answered instantly. Dozens of cannons fired, tearing through the drifting hulk, breaking it apart into glowing fragments. The silence was gone now. Every ship armed its weapons, every crew at full alert. But then a voice came again, the same mocking tone as before. We told you they were watching. The admiral's jaw tightened. His crew waited for orders, fear clawing at their nerves. But before he spoke, the scanners screamed. More wrecks were powering up. Lights blazing, weapons charging. And not just wrecks, shadows moved behind them, large shapes hidden in the dark, slipping between ruined ships. Cloaked vessels. Hunters. They had been there all along, waiting for the humans to come closer. Now they were ready to strike. The admiral gave his command, his voice steady and sharp. All ships, hold formation. Do not break line. The humans obeyed, moving as one wall of fire. The wrecked ships opened fire, beams cutting through the void. Alien ships uncloaked, hundreds of them, swarming like predators smelling blood. The sky lit up with burning trails of weapons. The battle had begun. But this time, the humans were ready. They had seen the trick, they had raised their shields, and they fought back with fury. Cannons thundered, missiles streaked, railguns spat fire. Alien ships shattered under the storm. Still, more came, circling like wolves, trying to draw the humans out, trying to break their wall. But humans had learned patience in war. They held their line, shields overlapping, covering one another, refusing to scatter. The fleet moved together, slowly pushing forward, step by step, fire by fire. Each alien ship that rushed in met a wall of steel and flame. Still, the enemy did not stop. Their numbers seemed endless, their hunger unbroken. And always, the mocking voice whispered across the channels. You fight hard, humans. But you are only delaying the end. This system is your grave. The admiral ignored it. His focus was only on his fleet, his people, his vow. Humanity did not give graves to others easily. Humanity fought until the last breath. Yet deep inside, even he felt the weight of the silence between each battle cry. Something about this system was wrong, deeply wrong. The enemy was not just fighting here. They were showing something. A message. That message became clearer when the flagship's sensors locked on to a strange structure hidden near the star. At first, it looked like wreckage. But as they scanned deeper, the truth emerged. It was not wreckage. It was a machine. A vast machine, larger than any battleship, chained to the gravity of the star. And inside it, there were signals. Faint, human, alive. Prisoners. The fleet froze at the discovery. The enemy had not just baited them. They had captured their people and turned them into part of the trap. As the realization struck, the voice returned, colder than ever. Welcome to the heart of the graveyard, humans. Your kind cries for help, and you rush in. Always the same. Always blind. Now look at what your mercy has given you. The crew stared at the screens, their hands shaking, their hearts burning with anger. The admiral stood silent, his face like stone. Around him, officers waited for his order. They were in a trap, deep inside an enemy's game, surrounded by fire and shadow. But they were still human. And humans, when cornered, were never prey. They were the hunters. The admiral's voice broke the silence at last, low and steady, filled with fire. All ships, prepare for counterstrike. The system turned into fire. Alien ships uncloaked one after another, dark shapes sliding out from the void, their weapons glowing as they surrounded the human fleet. The stars themselves seemed to vanish, hidden behind walls of steel. The human crews watched in silence, the weight of the ambush heavy on every mind. The enemy had planned this perfectly. First the false distress call, then the ghost ships, and now the swarm. The mocking voice returned, cold and sharp. You should have stayed in your safe little worlds. You humans are always so eager to play heroes. Now, you will die as fools. On the human flagship, the admiral stood tall. His hands gripped the railing, his face set like stone. Fear was there, but so was fury. He had walked into a trap, yes, but he would not allow humanity to be crushed here. His voice carried across the fleet in a single command. All ships, prepare for counterstrike. Engines flared, shields burned brighter, weapons locked on. The human fleet shifted into formation, moving like a single beast ready to strike. The aliens were faster, more numerous, but humans had something the enemy never understood. Discipline, unity, and the will to stand even when the sky itself turned against them. The first wave came fast, hundreds of alien ships rushing like wolves at the human wall. They fired beams that lit up the darkness, cutting toward human frigates. Explosions shook the shields, alarms screamed, but the humans held steady. Then their answer came. Cannons roared, railguns spat fire, and missiles streaked forward. The void erupted into storms of light as alien hulls shattered under the storm. A destroyer on the human left flank took a direct hit, its shields collapsing in a burst of sparks. The crew had no time to repair. Instead of retreating, the captain gave one last command. The destroyer's engines flared bright, and the ship hurled itself into the heart of the alien swarm. The impact tore through 3 enemy cruisers, breaking them apart in fire. The crew's sacrifice was not wasted. Their death gave the fleet time to reform, to hold the line. Across the human channels, silence followed for a moment. No one spoke. No one needed to. Every human heart burned with the same vow: fight harder, strike deeper, and make the enemy pay. But the aliens were not finished. Their formations shifted, weaving in and out, trying to cut the humans apart. They had numbers on their side, and every time one ship fell, two more appeared. Yet the humans adapted. Battleships moved forward to take the brunt, frigates darted in and out to strike weak points, carriers launched swarms of fighters that danced through the chaos like sparks in a storm. The enemy had numbers, but humans had fire. The battle turned fierce, the void filled with wreckage and burning trails of ships. Still, the mocking voice whispered through the channels. Brave. Very brave. But bravery cannot save you. You are only delaying your end. On the bridge of the flagship, the admiral ignored the voice. His eyes tracked the movements on the tactical map. He saw what the enemy was trying to do. They wanted to stretch the humans, to make them break formation, to scatter them into easy kills. He would not let it happen. His voice rang across the fleet. Hold the wall. Do not scatter. Make them come to us. And the humans obeyed. Their fleet held like iron, a shield of fire that refused to bend. Every alien ship that charged into range was torn apart by concentrated fire. But then something new appeared on the scanners. At first, it looked like only more enemy ships. But the readings were strange, larger than battleships, shapes the humans had not seen before. A ripple of unease passed through the fleet. The admiral's eyes narrowed. Report. The sensor officer's voice shook. Sir, they're deploying siege-class warships. The crew went silent. Siege ships were not hunters. They were executioners, built not for battle but for destruction, designed to break planets, fleets, entire civilizations. And now, 3 of them moved forward, their weapons charging. The humans knew what was coming. The admiral stood tall, his face calm though his heart was heavy. He had to act fast. He gave the order with steel in his voice. Redirect fire. Take those ships down. Human battleships shifted their aim, unleashing storms of fire. Fighters swarmed the siege ships, striking at weak points, tearing at engines and guns. But the siege ships were vast, their armor thick, their weapons glowing brighter with each passing second. And then one of them fired. A beam of raw energy cut across the void, striking a human cruiser. Shields flared, then shattered, and the ship was ripped in half in a burst of flame. The fleet trembled, but they did not break. Strike back, the admiral ordered, and they did. Railguns tore into the siege ship's hull, missiles punched through armor, fighters clawed at weak spots. At last, one of the massive ships cracked open, burning as it fell apart. Cheers echoed across the fleet, hope rising for a moment. But it was only one. 2 remained, and their weapons were ready. The admiral clenched his jaw. He knew the cost was going to be terrible. He opened a private channel to the captains of his heaviest battleships. His words were short, grim, but filled with fire. Hold the line. Humanity depends on us. The captains answered with no hesitation. They knew what it meant. They knew what would be asked. Yet not one of them turned away. They charged forward, their ships blazing like torches in the dark, drawing fire, shielding the rest of the fleet. Beams tore into them, ripping holes in their steel, but they did not falter. They fired until their last breath, burning the second siege ship into pieces before they fell silent, broken hulks drifting among the stars. Their sacrifice bought time, and time was what the humans needed. The last siege ship wavered, its weapons damaged, its engines crippled. The admiral gave the final order. All fire, now. Every gun in the fleet turned, every missile launched, every fighter dove in. The storm tore the siege ship apart, breaking it into burning fragments that scattered into the void. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. The humans had survived the ambush, but the cost was great. Ships drifted in ruin, names erased in fire. Yet the fleet still stood. The mocking voice did not return. For the first time, the enemy was silent. And in that silence, the humans understood what had happened. The trap was not meant only to kill them. It was meant to test them, to measure their strength, their will, their fire. And they had shown it. They had survived what no one else should have. But deep inside, every crew member knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The enemy had more waiting, more hidden, more cruel. The system itself was a snare, layer upon layer, and they had only broken through the first. On the flagship's bridge, the admiral stood in silence, staring at the burning wreckage. His crew looked to him, waiting for his next words. He spoke slowly, his voice calm but filled with steel. This battle is not over. They think we are trapped. They think we are prey. But they are wrong. We are humanity. And we fight until the stars themselves go dark. The human fleet floated among wreckage and fire, their shields cracked, their hulls scarred, but their hearts unbroken. They had faced the ambush, they had destroyed the siege ships, and they had stood when the enemy wanted them shattered. Yet the battle was not over. Alien vessels still circled in the dark, slipping between broken hulks, waiting for the moment to strike again. The silence after the fight felt heavy, too heavy. It was the silence of a predator crouching before leaping again. On the flagship, the admiral stood tall, eyes fixed on the tactical map. His officers reported losses, their voices low but steady. They had lost ships, yes, but they had not lost the fight. Humanity had faced death and refused to fall. The admiral's voice cut through the silence, calm but burning with iron. They thought we would break. Now we show them what it means to fight humanity. The fleet tightened its formation, wounded ships shielded by stronger ones, fighters recalled and refueled, missile racks reloaded. Every crew moved with grim determination. The memory of their fallen ships still burned in their minds. Rage replaced fear. This was no longer just survival. This was vengeance. The enemy struck again, hundreds of ships diving from the dark like knives. They fired in waves, beams of energy tearing across the void, missiles streaking toward the human wall. But this time the humans did not hold still. They moved forward, their formation shifting like a blade cutting through the swarm. Cannons roared, railguns spat steel, fighters poured out like fireflies, darting through the chaos. The human fleet answered not with defense, but with fury. A battleship at the center opened fire with every gun at once, its broadside tearing an alien cruiser into glowing fragments. A frigate squadron darted forward, weaving between wrecks, firing missiles at close range, breaking enemy lines. Fighters swarmed in packs, harassing larger ships, disabling engines and shields. Everywhere the humans struck, the enemy fell back, unprepared for the sudden ferocity. The admiral gave no rest. His voice echoed across the fleet. Push them. Do not give them time. Strike, and strike again. The humans obeyed with fire in their hearts. The aliens tried to adapt, to encircle, to choke the humans again, but the fleet moved too fast, too fierce. Every ship covered the next, every formation worked as one. A damaged cruiser, its hull broken, refused to retreat. Instead, it charged forward, its captain shouting the last words over comms. For humanity. The cruiser rammed into an alien carrier, detonating its fuel stores in a fireball that lit the void. The sacrifice gave fighters the chance to push deeper, tearing through enemy ranks. On the enemy channel, the mocking voice returned, but this time it no longer sounded amused. It sounded strained, frustrated. Stubborn creatures. You bleed, yet you still fight. Do you not understand? This place is your grave. But the admiral ignored the words. He had seen it in every war humans had fought. Enemies always believed humanity would break. They always believed that fear or numbers or power would crush the human will. But they never understood what it meant to be human. Humans fought hardest when there was no hope. Humans turned death into fire. The enemy pressed harder, desperate to turn the tide. A massive alien dreadnought moved forward, its weapons glowing, its cannons large enough to shatter cities. It unleashed a storm of fire, cutting through 2 human frigates at once, leaving nothing but glowing debris. The admiral watched with narrowed eyes. He gave the order. Target that ship. Bring it down. Every available gun turned, every fighter redirected. Missiles streaked across the void, railgun shells hammered into the dreadnought's shields. Still, it advanced, its armor glowing but unbroken. Then a human destroyer captain made the choice. Her voice came over the comms, calm, proud. For Earth. For the fleet. The destroyer's engines blazed as it hurled itself forward, dodging fire, weaving through chaos, and slamming into the dreadnought's hull. The explosion was blinding, tearing open the alien giant from within. The dreadnought broke apart in fire, drifting in silence. The destroyer was gone, but its sacrifice saved the fleet again. The humans fought with everything they had, every ship, every fighter, every last round of ammunition. The battle became a storm, the void filled with wrecks, fire, and silence broken by the thunder of war. The aliens faltered, their formations breaking, their confidence shaken. They had expected prey. They had found hunters. The mocking voice did not return this time. Only silence, broken by the crackle of dying ships. But even as the humans pushed the enemy back, the admiral's instincts warned him. It was too easy. The ambush had been perfect, the siege ships had been brutal, but the enemy was retreating too quickly now, too cleanly. He watched the tactical map as the alien ships pulled away, slipping into the dark, leaving wreckage behind. His eyes narrowed. This isn't retreat. This is movement. His suspicion was confirmed when the sensors screamed again. Deep in the system, closer to the star, something massive was powering up. Energy readings spiked higher and higher, beyond anything the fleet had seen. The officer's voice shook. "Admiral, it's another trap." The humans stared at the screens in shock. A massive structure was awakening, its shape vast, its core glowing with deadly power. It was no ordinary weapon. It was something older, something built to destroy not just ships, but entire fleets, entire worlds. The admiral stood silent, his jaw set, his hands tight on the railing. He had known from the moment the distress call reached them that this was no simple battle. The enemy was not just fighting them. The enemy was testing them, layer after layer, trap after trap, waiting to break their spirit. But humans did not break. His voice cut across the fleet, steady and sharp. "They want to trap us again. We will not fall. Prepare for the next strike." And so the humans braced themselves, their ships battered, their crews bloodied, but their fire brighter than ever. The enemy thought they had cornered prey. Instead, they had awakened predators. And in the silence before the next storm, one truth burned inside every human heart: humanity fights back. Always. The human fleet floated in tense silence, their weapons still hot from the last battle, their shields cracked, their hulls scarred. Smoke and fire drifted from wounded ships, but still they stood, holding formation, engines steady. The enemy had pulled back, vanishing into the dark, but the humans knew it was not victory. The sensors were screaming warnings, energy spikes growing stronger near the system's star. Something massive was waking, something hidden, something the enemy had prepared long before the humans arrived. On the flagship's bridge, the admiral stared at the readings. His officers whispered, their faces pale. "Sir, this isn't just a weapon. It's something larger. Something impossible." The tactical screen showed it clearly now. Near the burning star, a structure drifted, huge as a moon, its surface bristling with towers and glowing conduits. Energy pulsed through it like veins of fire, growing brighter with every second. It was alive, in its own way, built for one purpose: destruction. The crew watched in silence as the machine awakened. Massive arms stretched outward, spinning with gravitational force, bending the very space around it. The scanners read the output, numbers climbing higher and higher until they no longer made sense. "It's a gravity weapon," the science officer whispered, her voice shaking. "Sir, it's pulling us toward the star." The admiral clenched his jaw. He had expected a second trap, but not this. The enemy was not just trying to kill them. They wanted to drag the entire fleet into the heart of the star, to burn every human ship in one stroke. Engines roared as captains fought to break free, but the pull was strong, stronger than anything they had faced. Alarms blared on every deck, crews shouting, systems straining. The fleet was caught in a giant hand of invisible force. The admiral's voice cut through the chaos. All ships, reverse thrust. Overlap shields. Do not scatter. His words steadied the crews, pulling them back from panic. The humans fought the pull together, engines burning at maximum, shields feeding into each other, each ship protecting the next. But even as they pushed, the drag grew stronger. It was like trying to swim against a black hole. One frigate broke formation, engines screaming as it tried to pull free alone. For a moment, it looked like it might succeed. Then the gravity surged, tearing the frigate apart like paper, scattering its pieces into the void. The crews gasped, their hearts sinking. Alone, they were nothing. Together, they had a chance. The enemy's voice returned, cruel and mocking. You cannot fight the star itself. Your ships will melt, your bones will burn. This is the grave you chose. But the admiral did not listen. He had heard taunts before. What mattered now was survival. His eyes locked on the structure near the star. He studied it, his mind racing. And then his heart froze. Inside the machine, the scanners showed faint signals. Human signals. Life. His officers confirmed it, their voices filled with horror. Sir, there are humans in there. Thousands of them. They're being used. They're powering the weapon. The bridge went silent. The truth was worse than anyone had expected. The enemy had not only built a trap. They had taken human prisoners, chained them into the machine, and used their suffering to fuel its power. Every pulse of gravity, every surge of force, came from human lives burning away inside that monstrosity. Rage spread through the fleet like fire. The crews clenched their fists, their eyes hard. It was no longer just survival. It was rescue. Those were their people, their kin, their brothers and sisters. The enemy thought it was clever, that the humans would not fire on their own. But they had underestimated humanity's will. The admiral's voice rang across the fleet, steady and sharp. We cannot destroy it. Not yet. Those are our people inside. We hold. We fight. We buy time. The ships answered with fire. They redirected their weapons, hammering at enemy escorts that had uncloaked near the machine. Alien cruisers dove in, guarding their monstrous weapon, but the humans struck with fury. Missiles screamed, cannons thundered, fighters swarmed. The void filled with fire again as battle raged around the machine. Every second the humans held was another second to think, another second to find a way. Inside the machine, the prisoners suffered, chained to the heart of the beast, their strength drained to feed the weapon. But even there, hope had not died. Somewhere in the dark, one prisoner broke through the systems, his voice faint but clear on human comms. This is Sergeant Vale. We hear you. We are alive. We have a plan. Trust us. The fleet froze at the sound. Against all odds, their people inside were not broken. They were fighting, even from within the machine. The admiral's eyes burned. He gave the order instantly. Hold the line. Protect the prisoners. They will fight with us. The humans braced themselves as the gravity weapon pulsed again, dragging them closer to the star. Hulls creaked, engines screamed, but still they held, refusing to break. The enemy ships pressed harder, their numbers endless, but the humans answered with defiance. A carrier launched its last wave of fighters, sending them into suicidal runs against alien cruisers. A battleship, already burning, turned its remaining guns on the machine's escorts, destroying two before it finally exploded. Every sacrifice bought another heartbeat of time, another chance for the prisoners' plan to unfold. On the flagship, the admiral's eyes never left the screen. He knew the cost would be terrible, that many ships would not leave this system alive. But he also knew this: humanity never abandoned its own. Not when they cried for help, not when they were chained, not when they were turned into weapons. The enemy had made a mistake. They thought the humans' mercy was weakness. They would soon learn that mercy, in human hands, was a blade sharper than steel. The machine pulsed again, brighter, stronger, its force pulling harder than ever. The star's light burned hot on the hulls of the ships. The crews sweated at their stations, their eyes locked on their captains, their hearts filled with grim determination. They were being dragged toward death, but they would not go quietly. They would fight until the last breath, until the last spark. And deep inside the machine, the prisoners whispered to each other, passing signals, breaking chains, preparing their strike. The enemy thought they were fuel. Soon, they would be fire. As the system shook with gravity and war, the admiral's final words for the moment echoed across the fleet. His voice was iron, unshaken, unbroken. Humanity holds. Humanity fights. And humanity rescues its own. Inside the vast alien machine, where fire and steel groaned with every pulse of energy, the prisoners lived in darkness. They were chained to walls, strapped to glowing conduits, their strength drained by alien technology. Each breath was pain, each heartbeat stolen to power the gravity weapon that pulled the human fleet toward the star. But even in this nightmare, the prisoners had not given up. They whispered to one another when the guards were gone, passing secret messages, hiding strength when they pretended to be weak. Among them was Sergeant Vale, his voice steady even as his body trembled from exhaustion. He had once been a soldier of Earth, and even now, chained and beaten, he had not forgotten his duty. His eyes burned as he spoke softly to the others. Our people are out there. They came for us. We don't let this end here. We fight. The prisoners had been studying their prison for weeks. They had watched the guards, memorized their patterns. They had seen where the conduits connected, where the energy flowed, where the chains drew power. Vale had counted every step the aliens made, every command they spoke, every sound the machine produced. And then, by luck or fate, the prisoners had discovered something. The system was strong, but it was not perfect. The machine used them to fuel the gravity weapon, but it needed their cooperation. If they resisted in just the right way, if they twisted their energy at the right moment, the system would falter. The aliens had made them into batteries. But batteries could overload. Now, with the human fleet holding the line outside, Vale's plan came alive. He whispered the signal to the others. On my mark, we resist. Not before, not after. Together. We push back. The prisoners nodded, their eyes hard, their bodies trembling but ready. They knew what it would cost. Many of them would not survive. But if they succeeded, the weapon would falter, and the humans outside would have a chance. Outside, the human fleet continued to fight desperately. Ships shook under the pull of the gravity weapon, their engines screaming as they burned fuel faster than ever before. Hulls cracked, shields flickered, crews shouted at one another to hold steady. The admiral stood on the flagship's bridge, his eyes locked on the weapon. He knew the prisoners were inside. He had heard Vale's voice. He had promised to hold. He had promised to fight for them. Now, all he could do was wait for the moment when the prisoners struck. Inside the machine, Vale counted down in a whisper. 3, 2, 1 now. The prisoners roared as one, their voices echoing in the dark. They strained against their chains, pushing their strength in the opposite direction of the pull. The conduits sparked, the walls shook. The aliens turned, snarling, their glowing eyes flashing in shock. The prisoners had never resisted like this before. The system screamed, alarms blaring, energy readings spiking off the charts. Vale gritted his teeth, his body shaking with pain. Hold. Hold. Don't let go. The prisoners obeyed, their bodies burning, their veins feeling like fire. But together, they forced the energy to twist, to overload, to break. Outside, the human fleet saw it instantly. The gravity weapon faltered. The pull weakened for a heartbeat, then another. The admiral's eyes widened. He slammed his fist against the arm of his chair. They're doing it. The prisoners are fighting back. All ships, push now. Engines full power. The fleet roared forward, engines burning bright, pushing against the weakened drag. For the first time since the trap was sprung, hope surged across the human fleet. The aliens inside the machine panicked. Guards rushed in, striking at the prisoners, trying to break their resistance. But Vale and the others had no fear left. Their bodies were already burning, their lives already sacrificed. Every strike they took only fueled their rage, their defiance. They shouted louder, their voices becoming one. "We are human. We are not fuel." Their cries echoed through the metal halls as the machine shook under their rebellion. Sparks flew, conduits exploded, alarms screamed across the structure. The gravity weapon shuddered, its beams flickering, its strength collapsing. On the flagship, officers shouted updates. "Sir, the pull is weakening. They're doing it. They're tearing it apart from the inside." The admiral's voice thundered across the comms. "Then we give them cover. Every ship, focus fire on the escorts. Protect the prisoners with everything you have." Human cannons roared, missiles streaked across the void, fighters dove into alien cruisers, shredding them apart. The fleet fought like demons, every crew member knowing their brothers and sisters inside were giving their lives for this chance. Inside the machine, Vale's body was breaking, his vision fading. But he could hear the battle outside, the explosions, the distant thunder of human weapons. He smiled through the pain. His people were there. His people had not abandoned him. He shouted one last command. "Now! Break it!" The prisoners gave everything they had in one final surge. The conduits burst, fire spilling across the walls. The chains shattered, glowing with sparks. The machine screamed like a dying beast, its core flashing bright. Outside, the fleet watched in awe as the weapon shuddered. The pull collapsed completely, the gravity field dissolving. The massive structure dimmed, its lights flickering, its power dying. For the first time since the battle began, the humans were free. Crews cheered across the fleet, their voices filled with victory. But the admiral's eyes were grim. He knew what it had cost. Thousands of prisoners had given their lives to break the weapon. Their sacrifice had saved the fleet. Their defiance had turned the trap into hope. Yet even in death, the prisoners had not been silent. Before the machine collapsed, Vale had sent one last signal. His voice was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it reached the fleet. "Fight on, finish this, make them pay." The signal ended, but the words burned in every human heart. The admiral's voice echoed across the fleet, sharp as steel. "You heard them. We fight on. We finish this. For them." As the fleet pushed forward, flames still burning on their ships, they knew the battle was not over. The enemy would not give up. Reinforcements were coming. But now, the humans had more than survival. They had purpose. They had vengeance. And the enemy would soon learn what it meant when humans fought not just for themselves, but for the fallen. The alien machine burned. Its walls groaned with sparks, its conduits dripping molten fire, its chains broken by human defiance. The prisoners had struck, tearing apart the weapon that fed on their lives. Many had already fallen, their bodies silent, their strength consumed. But some still lived, their eyes blazing, their voices fierce. They were no longer prisoners. They were fighters, rebels rising in the heart of the enemy's greatest trap. And outside, the human fleet saw the change. They saw the weapon falter, saw the pull collapse, and they knew their people inside had not died in vain. Hope spread like fire across the fleet, hope sharpened into fury. The admiral stood tall on his flagship's bridge, watching the giant alien structure tremble. "They've done their part," he said, his voice heavy but proud. "Now we do ours. All ships, focus fire on the enemy fleet. Protect the survivors inside that machine. Make the enemy bleed." His words thundered through the comms. Across every human ship, crews roared with anger and courage. They had seen their people enslaved. They had heard their dying words. And now, they would fight with all the strength humanity had ever known. Human warships surged forward. Cannons lit the darkness. Missiles streaked like fire across the void. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, diving into enemy cruisers, tearing them apart with merciless precision. Alien ships scrambled to respond, but the humans pressed too hard, too fast. They fought not for survival, but for vengeance. Every human strike carried the voices of the prisoners who had resisted. Every explosion in space echoed with their rebellion. Inside the collapsing machine, Sergeant Vale staggered, half-blind, blood running down his face. He had given everything, yet somehow he still lived. Around him, prisoners tore free from their chains, grabbing pieces of metal, broken conduits, anything they could use as weapons. Alien guards rushed in, weapons blazing, but the prisoners were ready. For the first time, they fought not with despair, but with fire in their hearts. They rushed the guards, tackling them, striking them with chains, tearing their weapons from their hands. The halls filled with chaos, screams, and fire. Vale raised a captured alien rifle, his hands trembling but steady enough. He fired down the corridor, dropping 2 guards before they could raise their shields. "Forward!" he shouted, his voice hoarse but commanding. "This is our ship now. Fight. For Earth. For freedom." The prisoners roared, their voices shaking the walls, and charged again. They did not move like broken slaves. They moved like soldiers, like survivors, like humans who had been pushed too far. The aliens had never expected this. They had thought humans would break, would remain as tools, as fuel. But now, with the machine crumbling and the prisoners rising, panic spread through the alien ranks. Commanders screamed orders. Soldiers retreated and regrouped. But it was too late. The rebellion had begun, and it could not be stopped. Outside, human officers shouted updates to the admiral. "Sir, the prisoners are fighting inside. We're detecting weapon fire from the core." The admiral's eyes burned. He slammed his fist against the command chair. "Then we give them cover. No alien ship touches that structure while our people are inside. Drive them back." The fleet obeyed, pushing harder, their ships locked in brutal combat. Alien vessels exploded one after another, fire spreading across the void. Back inside, Vale and the rebels fought through corridor after corridor. They lost many, but they never slowed. They found rooms filled with more prisoners, weak and near death, but still alive. The rebels broke their chains, shouting, "Rise! Fight with us!" And those who could still stand joined them, grabbing whatever they could, their eyes filled with the same burning fire. Together, they became an army. The rebellion spread like wildfire. Everywhere in the machine, prisoners fought back. Some sabotaged the conduits. Some attacked the guards. Some simply stood tall and refused to kneel again. The alien crew had no answer. Their great weapon, once their triumph, had turned into a battlefield they could not control. At last, Vale and his fighters reached the core chamber. It was massive, glowing with pulsing light, its heart still trying to feed on the last fragments of human energy. Around it stood dozens of alien guards, their weapons drawn, their faces twisted with rage. The leader of the guards stepped forward, sneering. "You are cattle," he hissed. "You are nothing. You cannot win." Vale raised his rifle, his body trembling, but his voice clear. "We are human. And we are not yours." He fired, and the chamber erupted into chaos. The battle was brutal. The prisoners fought like demons, clawing and striking with everything they had. Vale took blast after blast, but he kept moving, kept firing, kept shouting. At last, with blood in his mouth and fire in his eyes, he reached the core itself. He placed his hand on the burning surface, felt its energy tearing at him. With the last of his strength, he ripped the control rods free, sparks and flames shooting across the chamber. The machine screamed, its light collapsing, its power dying. Outside, the admiral saw it. The alien weapon went dark. The entire machine began to collapse, fire spilling from its sides, its systems failing. He stood tall, his voice echoing across the fleet. "They've done it. The prisoners have won. Now we finish this." The fleet surged forward, striking the alien ships with renewed fury. One by one, the enemy vessels fell, burning in silence as the humans pressed their advantage. Inside the ruins of the machine, Vale collapsed. He could no longer move, no longer fight. Around him, the surviving prisoners stood victorious, though many had fallen. They had broken their chains. They had turned their prison into a battlefield, their despair into defiance. And though Vale's vision was fading, he smiled. He whispered one last word to his people. Free. His voice carried through the comms, a final message sent before the machine died. The admiral heard it, every crew member heard it, and their eyes burned with fury and pride. Humanity would not forget. Humanity would not forgive. The prisoners' rebellion had given them strength. And the battle was far from over. Because even as the enemy burned, sensors began to scream. More alien ships were arriving, far more than before. A second wave, an entire fleet, dropping out of hyperspace, filling the sky with their numbers. The admiral's face hardened as he stared at the endless swarm. The rebellion had lit a fire, but the war was not yet won. He spoke softly, but his voice was steel. Then we fight again. And so the battle was set to grow even larger, even deadlier. The rebellion had broken the trap, but now the humans would have to face the storm that followed. The stars rippled as the second wave arrived. The void lit up with endless shadows of alien warships dropping from hyperspace, their numbers so great that even the human fleet hesitated. Dozens became hundreds, and hundreds became thousands, filling the system like a swarm of locusts. Each vessel pulsed with alien fire, their weapons charged, their engines burning with cold fury. The humans had just broken the trap, just destroyed the great machine, and yet now they were staring at something even worse. It was no longer a battle. It was an invasion. The admiral stood silent for a long moment, his face pale but unbroken. His officers looked at him, fear in their eyes, waiting for the words that would decide their fate. He spoke at last, slow and hard, every word heavy with steel. We hold the line. Humanity does not kneel. Not today. Across the fleet, his words spread. Crews tightened their grips on consoles. Fighters scrambled. Guns reloaded. They all knew the truth. They were outnumbered, badly. But they were not broken. They would fight until nothing was left. The alien fleet moved like a tide, surrounding the human ships, cutting off escape. Their voices filled the comms with cruel promises, their laughter cold and sharp. You cannot resist, the alien commander hissed, his image appearing on every screen. Your prisoners are ash. Your fleet will burn. Your world will follow. The humans said nothing. Their silence was their answer. And then the first shots were fired. The void exploded with fire. Alien beams slashed through the dark, tearing into human shields, smashing into hulls. Human ships answered with fury, their cannons blazing, their missiles streaking across the void. Explosions erupted everywhere, lighting the system with fire and death. The battle had begun. Human fighters swarmed like angry sparks, darting into alien formations, striking at engines and weak spots before vanishing again. They fought with desperate courage, knowing every second bought time, every strike saved another ship. But the enemy kept coming, endless and merciless. Cruisers burned. Battleships shuddered. Frigates exploded in silence, their crews lost to the void. The admiral watched it all, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the command rail until his knuckles turned white. He had expected this. He had known the enemy would not let them escape so easily. But even he had not expected so many. Inside the ruins of the alien machine, the surviving prisoners could see the battle through shattered viewports. They saw human ships burning, but they also saw them fighting, refusing to give ground. Sergeant Vale, barely alive, whispered from the floor, his voice faint but fierce. They fight for us. Don't let it be for nothing. The prisoners understood. They knew their rebellion had sparked this storm. They knew humanity was paying the price. But they also knew they had lit a fire the enemy could not put out. Even as Vale's eyes closed, the prisoners swore they would never stop resisting. Back outside, the battle grew worse. Alien warships pressed in, their weapons slamming into the human line, tearing holes through shield after shield. The human fleet shrank, their formation cracking under the sheer weight of the enemy. Yet every time a human ship fell, it took 2 alien ships with it. The aliens had numbers, but the humans had rage, fury born from betrayal and blood. They fought like wolves surrounded by a pack, biting, clawing, never letting go. Still, the enemy numbers were too great. Reports came in one after another. The Valor is down. The Black Star has lost engines. We've lost contact with the eastern flank. The Admiral closed his eyes for one heartbeat, then opened them again. He pressed the comm, his voice steady. We do not break. We do not surrender. Humanity will be remembered. His words echoed across every ship, and the crews roared with defiance, even as their ships burned around them. The alien commander laughed, watching from his flagship. Fools. Brave, but doomed. You cannot stand against the swarm. You will fall as all cattle fall. He raised his claw, giving the order for the final push. Alien ships surged forward, weapons blazing, intent on finishing the fight. And then, something changed. The stars shifted. Sensors screamed. A ripple spread across the void, and new shapes emerged from hyperspace. But they were not alien ships. They were human. Massive, dark, and armed with firepower unlike anything seen before. A second human fleet, hidden until now, emerging at the exact moment the enemy thought victory was theirs. At the front of the new fleet was a colossal warship, larger than any vessel in human history, its hull covered in black steel, its guns glowing with power. The Admiral's eyes widened, and for the first time that day, he allowed himself a smile. Reinforcements had come. The alien commander froze, his confidence faltering as he saw the new arrivals. He shouted orders, trying to reorganize, but it was too late. The new human fleet opened fire, unleashing a storm of missiles, plasma, and railgun fire that tore through alien ranks like paper. The colossal warship's main cannon fired once, a single shot that ripped an enemy battleship in half, the explosion lighting the void like a second sun. The tide of battle shifted instantly. The humans were no longer outnumbered prey. They were hunters with teeth bared. The Admiral opened his comms to the new fleet, his voice sharp. You're late. The reply came with a chuckle, deep and confident. We wanted to make an entrance. And with that, the two fleets joined as one, human ships fighting side by side, tearing into the enemy with savage precision. Alien formations broke apart. Their commanders screamed for retreat, but the humans pressed harder, not letting them escape. For the first time, the enemy felt fear. The prisoners inside the ruined machine saw the human reinforcements arrive, their eyes wide with hope. Some dropped to their knees, weeping. Others clenched their fists, shouting with joy. They had thought it was over, thought humanity would fall. But now they saw the truth. Humanity was not only surviving. Humanity was rising. The battle was not yet won. The aliens still had numbers, still had strength. But now, humanity had shown its hidden hand. They had shown that even when trapped, outnumbered, and betrayed, they could not be broken. And as the colossal human warship fired again, cutting another enemy cruiser to pieces, every human heart in the system knew the same thing. The war had only just begun. The system burned with war. Human ships and alien warships clashed in fire and steel, the void echoing with silent explosions. The arrival of the second human fleet had turned the battle upside down, and at the center of it all, the colossal human warship moved like a dark giant, its massive guns firing blasts that ripped entire enemy squadrons apart. Each shot shook the battlefield, sending alien vessels spinning into fire and wreckage. The enemy commander snarled from his throne of black metal, his claws gripping the edge as his eyes locked onto the giant human ship. "Destroy it," he hissed to his officers. "If that monster falls, the rest will crumble." Across the alien armada, orders spread, and suddenly hundreds of enemy ships turned their guns toward the Colossus. Beams of light, plasma bolts, and missiles streaked across space, all converging on the massive vessel. For a moment, The great warship vanished behind a storm of fire. On the human command ship, officers gasped as sensors screamed. The admiral narrowed his eyes, watching carefully. When the smoke cleared, his lips curved into a thin smile. The Colossus still stood. Its shields flickered with sparks, but its armor was unbroken, its guns still burning. Then the giant ship answered, its cannons roaring, its missile bays unleashing a rain of destruction. Alien ships exploded one after another, whole formations torn apart as if the void itself was angry. The humans cheered, their courage renewed, their hearts beating with hope. Still, the battle was far from over. The enemy had numbers beyond counting, and for every alien ship that fell, more pressed forward, desperate to overwhelm the humans before the tide could fully turn. The alien commander's voice rang out again, filled with venom. So this is the pride of your people. Impressive, but pride cannot stop destiny. You will still fall. He gave a signal, and from the shadows behind the alien fleet, new ships appeared. They were larger, darker, pulsing with energy unlike anything seen before. These were not ordinary warships. These were the alien empire's dreadnoughts, reserved only for their greatest battles. Their weapons hummed with power as they charged, aiming not at the human fleet, but at Earth itself, light years away. Sensors picked up the massive surge of energy, and horror spread through the human crews. The alien commander was not fighting only to win the battle. He meant to destroy humanity's home, to end the war in one strike by burning Earth to ash. The admiral's face turned to stone. He knew the truth. If that weapon fired, it would not matter if the fleet won or lost here. Humanity itself would die. He pressed the calm, his voice heavy but firm. All ships, protect Earth. Do not let that weapon fire. The human fleets moved at once, their ships breaking through alien lines, trying desperately to reach the dreadnoughts before the weapon fully charged. Fighters screamed forward, missiles lit the void, and cannons blazed. But the enemy had expected this. Alien escorts swarmed in, blocking the human advance, sacrificing themselves to buy time for the weapon. Minutes stretched like hours. The dreadnoughts glowed brighter, their weapon almost ready. Inside the colossal human warship, the captain gave a single order. Charge the main cannon. Maximum power. Engineers worked in silence, their faces pale, their hands moving fast. The weapon at the heart of the ship began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the entire vessel seemed alive with light. The admiral watched the power readings climb, and for the first time in the war, he felt something different. He felt the weight of destiny pressing down on them. If this shot failed, Earth would die. If it struck true, humanity might live. He gave the command. Fire. The void itself seemed to tear open as the colossal warship fired its main gun. A single beam of pure destruction surged forward, cutting across the battlefield, tearing through alien lines as if they were paper. It struck one of the enemy dreadnoughts full on. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought split in half, fire ripping through its core, the explosion so massive it lit the entire system like a second sun. Human crews roared with triumph. But the victory was short. The other dreadnoughts continued to charge, their weapons humming louder, almost ready to fire. The alien commander's voice thundered with rage. You dare defy the Empire? Then watch as your world burns. The alien weapon locked onto Earth's coordinates, and power surged. Human ships tried desperately to stop it, ramming enemy vessels, unleashing everything they had, but the dreadnought's shields held. The admiral's eyes locked on the colossal warship, and he gave one last order. Again. Fire again. The ship's crew scrambled, pouring every last reserve into the main cannon. Systems failed, lights flickered, the hull groaned, but the weapon charged one more time. The alien weapon began its final sequence. Two powers built at once, each preparing to strike. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Then the Colossus fired. The second beam tore through space, slamming into another dreadnought just as its weapon was about to unleash. The alien ship exploded in a chain of fire, its weapon tearing itself apart, the blast consuming dozens of ships around it. But not all had been destroyed. One last dreadnought remained, its weapon still glowing, seconds from release. The admiral gritted his teeth, his voice cold. All ships, focus fire. Every human vessel turned its guns on the last dreadnought. Missiles, plasma, railguns, everything humanity had was unleashed in one desperate storm. The alien shields flickered, then failed. The dreadnought cracked, then split apart, its weapon exploding harmlessly in the void. Silence fell across the battlefield. Earth was safe. The human crews let out cries of joy, some weeping, some laughing, all alive with relief. But the battle was not yet finished. Alien ships still surrounded them, furious and desperate. The colossal warship's guns still burned, ready for more. The admiral looked across the wreckage and spoke, his voice like iron. This was their turning point. Now we make it ours. Press the attack. Break them. And with that, the human fleet surged forward, their courage unshaken, their fury unleashed. The war had changed. Humanity had survived the trap, survived the ambush, and now, with Earth safe behind them and a Colossus leading the way, they were ready to strike back. The black silence of space stretched forever, cold and empty, until something broke it. A faint signal appeared on the human fleet's monitors, weak and desperate, like a whisper in the dark. At first, no one believed it was real. Static filled the bridge, broken words barely clear enough to hear. "Help us, please, we are under attack." The voice was human. Fear echoed in every syllable, fear so strong that even through the static, it made the hair rise on the backs of the crew. They had all heard many distress calls before, but this one was different. The tone was sharp, the panic was raw, and the silence after each broken word felt heavier than any battle. The fleet admiral leaned forward in his command chair, eyes fixed on the sound. Around him, his officers exchanged quick glances. Was this a real cry for help, or something else? Humanity had laws, and one of them was simple: never ignore a distress signal. Long ago, when humans were weak and scattered, they had sworn that no human voice in space would ever be abandoned. It was a vow written in fire and blood, paid for by lives lost in the void. The admiral remembered the stories, the times when no help had come. He could not allow history to repeat. Yet, in the back of his mind, suspicion whispered. The signal was too perfect, too sudden. No coordinates, no full message. Only fear, like bait in a trap. The officers debated quickly. Some warned that it was too dangerous. Others argued that ignoring it would be betrayal. The younger crew, fresh and eager, demanded action. The veterans frowned, knowing the galaxy was not a kind place. Still, the admiral stood and made the choice. His voice was calm, steady, but filled with weight. "Set course. Prepare the fleet. We answer the call." Engines roared alive, and the great ships of humanity turned. They were not the largest ships in the galaxy, but each one carried something no other race had: human stubbornness, human fire, and the will to fight even in impossible odds. The fleet stretched like a wall of steel across the stars, hundreds of ships moving together with perfect coordination. From small frigates to heavy battleships, their hulls shone faintly under distant starlight, silent but powerful. Hours passed as they crossed the void. The distress signal grew stronger, then weaker again, as if it was running out of breath. Every crew member listened in silence, their minds imagining the unknown faces behind the call. Were they soldiers, civilians, colonists? No one knew. What they did know was this: if humans were crying out, other humans must answer. Finally, the fleet reached the edge of the system. From a distance, the planet looked lifeless. The scanners read silence, no broadcasts, no cities lit, no ships flying. A ghost world. The admiral's brow tightened as he stared at the readings. "Scan again," he ordered. The crew obeyed, sending waves of signals across the system. Still nothing. No life signs. No enemy. Nothing but broken wreckage floating slowly in the dark. The first officer turned to him, voice low. "Sir, this place is dead." The admiral did not answer. His eyes locked on the drifting hulks ahead. Wrecked ships, twisted metal, shattered hulls, yet some of them looked fresh, as if destroyed only days ago. And some still had power flickering faintly inside. That was strange. Too strange. Human ships did not hold power so long after death unless someone kept them alive. The fleet advanced slowly, shields raised. Tension filled every ship, silence heavier than any battle. The younger crew whispered among themselves, nerves biting deep. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. Even space itself felt too quiet, like a predator holding its breath before striking. Then it happened. The broken ships drifted closer. One of them rotated slowly, and for a brief second, its weapon systems came into view. The crew gasped. The cannons were not dead. They were armed. And aimed. "Raise shields," the admiral barked. Energy fields flared around human ships, glowing faintly as they locked into place. Alarms echoed across the fleet. Something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. And then, another sound broke through the static. Not the weak cry for help this time. A new voice, cold and mocking. "You came," it whispered across the channels. "We knew you would." The bridge fell silent. Every officer froze, eyes wide. The admiral's voice was low, steady, almost a growl. "Identify yourself." Laughter echoed back, sharp and cruel. "Does it matter? You humans are predictable. You hear a cry, you run. Just like we expected." The crew felt their stomachs twist. The signal had been bait. A trap. Someone had studied humanity well enough to know their laws, their vows, their very hearts. The admiral rose to his feet. His jaw was set like stone, his eyes cold as the void. He looked out into the starfield, where silent wreckage drifted like baited hooks in dark water. The officers waited, breaths held, hearts pounding. Everyone knew what this meant. They were not rescuers anymore. They were prey. But humans were not easy prey. Before the admiral could give an order, the sensors screamed. Red warnings flashed across every screen. Ships were appearing, hundreds, decloaking one after another, surrounding the fleet. The stars themselves seemed to vanish, hidden behind walls of alien steel. The crew stared in horror. The trap had closed. The mocking voice returned, filled with cruel amusement. "Welcome, humans. You have answered the call. Now, you will not leave." The admiral stood tall, his hands gripping the railing of his command deck. His crew turned to him, fear in their eyes, waiting for orders. He did not tremble. He did not falter. His voice cut through the fear like a blade. "All ships, battle stations." The crew straightened, fear turning to steel. Across the fleet, weapons powered up, shields brightened, engines roared. The humans had walked into a trap, but they were not broken. If the enemy thought they had caught helpless prey, they would soon learn what it meant to fight humanity. And in that moment, as alien ships closed in and silence broke into the thunder of war, one truth burned inside every human heart. Humanity answers every call, even if it leads into hell itself. To the enemy, it was a perfect trap. To the humans, it was only the beginning. The void was filled with broken ships, drifting wrecks, and burning fire, yet the battle was far from finished. The human fleets had saved Earth from destruction, but the enemy still fought with desperation, refusing to retreat. The colossal human warship led the charge, its massive guns thundering, tearing holes through enemy lines. Human fighters swarmed, missiles streaked across the darkness, and alien ships exploded one after another. Yet the alien commander, though enraged, did not surrender. From the bridge of his flagship, his eyes burned with hatred. "You may have stopped the weapon, humans," he growled, "but you will not stop the Empire. We have one more card to play." At his command, the alien flagship began to transform, its hull splitting open, revealing hidden machinery, massive claws of metal unfolding. The ship was not just a warship, it was a superweapon, a fortress designed for one purpose: to destroy entire fleets. A massive energy sphere began to form between its claws, pulsing brighter and brighter, its power unlike anything seen before. The human admiral's eyes narrowed as he realized what was happening. This weapon was not aimed at Earth. It was aimed at the battlefield itself. If it fired, both human fleets would be annihilated in one strike. There would be no survivors. Alarms screamed across human ships as sensors picked up the growing energy. Officers shouted, voices filled with fear, but the admiral's voice cut through the chaos, steady and calm. This is the final trap. If we break it, the war is ours. If we fail, humanity dies. All ships, focus everything on that flagship. The fleets obeyed at once, pouring fire into the alien fortress. Cannons roared, missiles streaked, beams of light stabbed into its shields, but the alien defenses were stronger than anything the humans had faced. Shot after shot struck, yet the fortress held, the sphere of energy growing larger, glowing like a false sun. The alien commander laughed, his voice echoing across the comms. Your courage is admirable, but useless. Watch as I erase you from existence. The colossal warship surged forward, ignoring the hail of enemy fire that slammed against its armor. Its captain shouted over the roar of alarms, "Bring us closer. All power to weapons." The ship's massive cannon began to charge again, light spilling across the void, but this time the system strained, sparks flying, metal groaning as if the giant itself was in pain. The engineers shouted warnings. We cannot hold much longer. One more shot could tear us apart. But the admiral's command came cold and clear. Do it. Humanity has no choice. Across the fleet, human crews understood. Every ship, big and small, poured its strength into this moment, sacrificing power, diverting shields, everything into one final assault. Fighters dove into the enemy lines, exploding in suicide runs to weaken the shields. Cruisers unleashed all remaining torpedoes, burning themselves out. The humans gave everything, every last spark of strength, to break the trap. The alien fortress glowed brighter, the sphere now massive, shaking the very void with its energy. The admiral stared at it, his jaw set like stone. Then, at the exact moment the alien commander prepared to unleash the weapon, the colossal human warship fired. A blinding beam tore across the battlefield, striking the fortress head-on. The shield shattered, the armor split, the energy sphere twisted and screamed, unstable, its power turning wild. The alien commander's eyes widened in shock. No, this cannot be. His voice was cut off as the sphere collapsed inward, then exploded outward in a storm of fire and light. The alien fortress was ripped apart, consumed in its own trap, the explosion tearing through the alien fleet around it. Ships shattered, crews vanished in fire, the Empire's strength broken in a single, terrible instant. The blast washed across the battlefield, rocking human ships, battering them with shockwaves, but they held. When the light finally faded, silence fell. Where the alien fleet had been, only wreckage remained, drifting and lifeless. The colossal human warship floated at the center, smoke rising from its wounds, its armor blackened, but still alive. Across the human fleets, voices rose in cries of victory. The enemy was broken. The trap had been destroyed. Humanity had survived. The admiral stood on his bridge, his face hard, his voice steady as he gave the final command. All ships. Secure the battlefield. Rescue the prisoners. Gather our dead. Today, we showed the galaxy what it means to be human. Rescue ships moved through the wreckage, pulling survivors from shattered hulks, bringing home prisoners who had been trapped in alien holds. Across the fleets, crews wept and laughed, their relief overwhelming, their pride unshakable. Humanity had faced the trap and broken it, not with numbers, not with power, but with courage, sacrifice, and unity. Yet as the fleets prepared to return home, as Earth prepared to celebrate survival, something stirred in the darkness. From the far edge of the system, sensors caught a faint signal. At first it was thought to be broken debris, but then the message came through, faint, almost a whisper. This is not the end. Others are coming. The admiral listened in silence, his eyes narrowing. He gave no speech, no celebration, only a quiet order. Record the signal. Prepare the fleets. Humanity answers every call, even the next one. And with that, the colossal warship turned its battered hull toward the stars, leading the survivors back, not to peace, but to the promise of new battles waiting in the endless dark. The trap had been broken, the enemy shattered, but the war of humanity was only beginning.